want to thank everyone for coming and attending this, our final summer webinar for the season, featuring the school in Japan. And we're really excited to be joined by Sanae, who's the director of the program, and Miki, who is the cultural coordinator and student organizer. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and get started with the presentation. All right, so for those of you who are familiar with Middlebury's programs, we operate in 16 countries, full immersion programs, and many of them feature the language pledge, which is a formal commitment to speak only, in this case, Japanese for the duration of the program. And in our site in Tokyo, we're actually located about 30 minutes west of the city in the Mitaka neighborhood. And students get to live and study in that area and still experience Tokyo when they, so we also have this video.
My name is Jen Meneses Montiel, and I studied abroad in Tokyo, Japan. Week 1, day 1 in Japan, my friends and I were already out and about and exploring. It's really interesting. Riding trains in Tokyo is a really fun experience. There is a way that you can go from Shinjuku to Harajuku to Shibuya. These are places that I had heard about, but to go there, live there, and become familiar with these places was super, super nice. And I mean, I really appreciate having had that opportunity, being able to say that Japan was my home for a year, and these were some of the places that I went to. I was studying in ICU, International Christian University. Living in a dorm and having 3 Japanese roommates was really helpful. If I had a question on homework or just general grammar, if I had heard something during the day that I didn't understand, I could just walk out and be like, hello, what does this mean? There's so much that you learn only by experience. And I think that would be the most important part is, do you want to keep hearing about these things, or do you want to be living them? Do you want people to tell you this is good or this is bad? Or do you want to be there and determine that for yourself? Think about that. Abroad gave me the opportunity to reevaluate the things that matter in my life. And looking back, I'm well, I learned a lot, especially from being in a culture that's so vastly different from the United States. And so I think if you want a new perspective on the way that different countries function, there's no better way to do that than by studying abroad.
A student perspective, just to get us started and give a little taste of what the program is all about. So as the student mentioned, their students are housed at the International Christian University in a dorm with other Japanese roommates, and they have access to all of the facilities that the university provides. It's a small liberal arts school, about the size of Middlebury, about 2,900 undergraduates, and so students are supported not just by the university with their ability to participate in all areas from academics to extracurriculars to living on campus and having that just sort of dorm life experience, but also from our staff abroad. So I'll take this opportunity to introduce again our director, Sanae, and the student affairs and cultural coordinator, Miki, and then hand it over to them.
Thank you so much. Yes, so thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for coming to spend the time with us today. And I realize some of you are students, maybe interested in participating, and some of you are advisors learning about the program to help the students make decisions. If you have any questions during the, the presentation, please just indicate and ask. I'd like this opportunity to be as casual and also informative as possible. Michaela, if you could go back one more slide to the language pledge slide, I wanted to mention a little more about the language pledge. As Michaela indicated, it's a formal commitment and expression of that in a formal way. Um, the, the language pledge begins by saying this: to take fullest advantage of my time abroad, I will maintain the spirit of the Middlebury Language Pledge to speak only the language that I'm studying. And here the expression, I will maintain the spirit of the Middlebury Language Pledge, is a very particular expression. So I wanted to mention, elaborate on that just a little bit. That is, we say, I will speak only the target language, but I will maintain the spirit. Why that spirit? It's because if you are living in Japan, it is difficult to really speak only the Japanese language, not because of your weakness or because you are lazy, but because there are a lot of external factors that we need to consider. And one of those, for instance, is that if you are a visitor from outside, a lot of Japanese people will talk to you in English because those people on the street do not know whether you're living there or visiting there, whether you can speak the language or not. And out of their willingness, they will initiate very often the conversations in English. What do you do in those situations? So any grown-up wise person would think, oh, should I correct that person's inappropriate or incorrect assumption that I don't speak the language, or should I go with it? These are decisions that you make every day as a person who live in Japan and interact with the culture. So this spirit of the language pledge even includes the fact that we will learn to adapt to these changing situations and learn how to maximize the opportunities to use the language, given that you might apparently look like a person from outside of the community, or sometimes you might have grown up in a different place, but your parents might be from Japan, and your living in Japan is a search for your origin and identity as well. So everybody brings different stories, and hopefully the language pledge will serve as a tool to help us maximize those opportunities. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about the curriculum. So typically, participants in our program take a total of 4 credits, and the slide is divided into left-hand side column and the right-hand side column. Left-hand side column indicate that everybody takes 2 courses by directly enrolling into the courses offered by the home institution, the International Christian University. That includes the language course and 1 content course taught in the Japanese language, but in whatever subject field. So first, I'd like to explain what they are. The host university has a very sophisticated language program. It provides courses from beginning level 1 through level 8. Level 8 serves graduate students. So level 8 is seminar courses and serving those who are learning to write scholarly articles in the Japanese language. So you will be somewhere in between, I'm sure. Another feature of the host institution's language program is that they have a very wide selection for students who are heritage learners. That's a particular expression, meaning you might have had a family member who speaks the language. But then, depending on the situation, you might be fluent both in reading and writing, or sometimes you might be fluent in the language in speaking, but not necessarily in writing. So ICU provides a wide variety of courses to address those needs that are particular to the heritage learners as well, which I think is one of the strengths of our relationship with the host university. Moving on to the content courses, because it's a liberal arts college, you will be able to choose any course in most of the fields that are available to most of the liberal arts colleges, starting from like Japanese literature or music, history, art, science, computer science, mathematics, physics, or musical production, and so on and so forth. And students usually choose depending on the interest and also the need of their academic curriculum as well. I'd like to answer some of the questions that I receive very often from participants. Number one, can I choose whatever courses? The answer is yes. Sometimes you might go to the first class and find, oh, I don't get the vibe from this faculty member, and that's fine. But most of the courses are available in most of the fields. I'm a little worried about taking the course all in the language. And indeed, yes. One of the features of our program is that we encourage everybody to take the courses taught in the language. And usually the ICU has courses from beginning to level 8, I mentioned. Usually students at ICU typically will start taking those courses in the language at level 6. What about you? If you are placed at level 4, we still encourage you to take the course in the language, but we will also arrange writing tutorials and also support. The office will write a formal letter to the faculty who is teaching those courses to explain these students are taking the course in the language because of us. We are forcing them to do that. And also ask the faculty members to be considerate of your situation as well. And faculty members, we have been on campus for 10 years. The faculty members are always impressed by the academic rigor that our participants bring. So they are extremely welcoming and supportive. And plus, you will have 100% support from our office if you need any help in the language as well. Another question I typically receive is, can I take a course in English? The answer is yes. In a very particular situation, actually, Andrea, you mentioned you are a faculty in science. If you are in the field of science and if you really need to take a course in English to be able to fulfill your major requirement, and if your academic advisor says, yes, that course taught or taken in English at a foreign institution will count towards your major, and if your advisor approves it, then we'd love you to come and take the course in English to fulfill your requirement so that you will make a steady progress towards your major, which might be science, the physics, mathematics, or sometimes pre-med, and then still get the most out of your experiences being in Japan as well. We have had students who majored in mathematics, for instance, and a pre-med student who came and did that. But make sure to talk to your advisor to know that that course in particular is counted, actually approved towards your progress in fulfilling the major requirements as well. Lastly, this is to add a little bit of flavor. A lot of some students have taken up a new foreign language while in Japan. Like Korean language program is very strong at ICU, and one student took Indonesian language, and all of them said, you might wonder why a foreign language, but the instructor actually explains most of the things in the Japanese language about Korean grammar or about Indonesian linguistics, and it's a fascinating experience as well. And lastly, ICU has a very interesting offering set of courses in the PE program, like wall climbing is one of them, like traditional dance or taiko drumming, and not karate, judo, and aikido as well. So we highly encourage you to take PE courses as well. Just to get physical exercise in your regular schedule. And also the faculty members have been very encouraging of that. And if you are at Middlebury College, you can use those PE credits to fulfill your requirement, PE requirement as well. Okay, let's look at the courses that are on the right-hand side. These 3 courses are taught by the faculty members in my office, myself and Miki as well. And those are intended, number one, the first one, to help you bridge from, if you're in the intermediate level, intermediate to taking the course all in Japanese taught by a Japanese faculty member who may not be a language instructor. So a content course is taught, but that content course is actually more friendly towards people who are learning language at the intermediate high level or advanced level. If you place at level 7 or above, we encourage you to take content course in Japanese, 2 content course in Japanese, instead of taking the exploration of contemporary Japan. Other 2 courses are intended to give you regular reflections about your progress and life in Japan, and to get you out of the classroom and the campus into the community to offer meaningful services in the community. So I'd like to explain about the first course, Exploration of Contemporary Japan, and Miki will talk about the other 2 courses. Let's move on to the next slide. This Exploration of Contemporary Japan is a course we developed through, based on our experiences of helping or interacting with our participants over the past, how many years? Past years. It incorporates information gathering expeditions around Tokyo. Usually we discuss a certain topic and then you will go out of the campus to look for the signs of what we discussed and then bring back those information and then we'll discuss. So in a way, it serves as a very well structured and guided reflection, opportunities for reflection in a classroom setting as well. It's intended to increase your direct exposure to and interaction with the society and people. Usually it involves like interviewing people on the street. And during the first of those interviewing exercises and homework assignments, a lot of the participants say, "Oh my God, you mean you want me to talk to a stranger on the street?" And I say, "Yes, let's practice here and then go and talk to at least 5 people." And hopefully it turns out to be a fun experience. And even if maybe it's not, you will gain a lot of practical hands-on experiences learning what people do on the street as well. It's also a very writing intensive. We'll have a lot of writing exercises, and so certainly it will help you develop writing skills. And the last point is strengthen ability to critically review scholarly publications and to develop coherent arguments in Japanese language. Here, the critically does not mean, oh, Japanese people are doing it wrong, kind of critical, but we will read a lot of papers in English as well as in Japanese, and we'd like to encourage you to go out in the field, outside of the classroom and say, well, the author said this, but in reality, I don't think this is a good generalization. Or you might say, oh, the author says this, and oh my God, that's really true. It's happening in Japan right now, unfolding right in front of me. So either way, it's an opportunity to interact with the scholarly work in a personal way and to gain deeper understanding of how those pieces of knowledge come to be crystallized as a form of scholarly publication as well. Okay, so let's move on to the next course. Miki will talk about. Okay, sorry, I forgot. And as a part of the exploration of contemporary Japan, we have incorporated a project called Global Partnership for Sustainability. And we make trips, organize trips as a part of the class to remote villages in Tottori Prefecture in the fall, and then Nagano Prefecture in the spring. Tokyo is a large metropolitan area. And one of the features of Japan, I think, is the growing disparity between the lifestyles of those people in urban settings and those people who are in small villages, very traditional, and in many situations, the population is declining, and they are having difficulties sometimes maintaining the village life. But at the same time, it doesn't mean they are in poor conditions, they are in poverty. Those lives in villages are rich in a very different way. So I want all of you to know that both of these are the realities of Japan, and both of these are Japan. So we'll go there for a weekend, stay overnight, actually two nights, and meet the people, have discussions, and usually we eat and walk around and get to know that aspect of Japan as well. Okay. Let's move on.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Miki Arakaki. I am a student affairs and culture coordinator of school in Japan. I help students with adjusting life in Tokyo. I graduated from ICU, so I lived in Mitaka for 5 years, 5 or 6 years. So I know a lot about Mitaka. Okay, so let me explain about the second course taught by Middlebury School in Japan office. The course is called Reflections on Japanese Culture. It's a course that helps students with reflect on their experiences and learnings during their study abroad. So we will meet once a week in a classroom and talk about students' experiences. And they will write essays or journals in Japanese, probably more than you think. And we will keep the writings in online e-portfolio so that you can use these writings in Japanese as a writing sample in the future. So the pictures are the journals that were written by former students. They write about their their daily lives or trips, and they will talk about these experiences. They will share these experiences with other classmates. So this is the second course that is offered by this office. Could you change that slide? Okay, thank you. And okay, and another highlight of Middlebury School in Japan is community engagement, and this is the third course that is taught by Middlebury office. The So in community engagement, you will choose a local community and engage in a service activity. So one of the important purposes is to experience a process of becoming a community member outside of campus environment. And and through community engagement, you are expected to develop intercultural communication skill and Japanese communication skills. Unlike campus environment, it is more challenging to communicate with local people outside of campus because they sometimes don't understand English. So you have to communicate only in Japanese. But it's gonna be a great experience. So you will engage in at least 24-hour practicum with a local organization, and we will have a weekly reflections in a classroom. In addition, you will have a final project to conclude your community engagement activities. Okay, next slide, please. So you will choose a community organization based on your interest. If you are interested in education, you can do your activities at educational institutions such as like elementary schools or secondary schools. Or you can go to a local local community center and read some picture books to small children. If you're interested in working at an office environment, you can work at companies based on a local community, but please note that it requires advanced Japanese language skills. You also have a chance to work with local farmers if you are interested in urban farming. During the orientation week, we will have individual interview. Like you and I will have a individual interview session to discuss your interest and potential community engagement site. So you don't have to worry about not finding a community engagement site. You will find one with me. And you can also look for a community engagement site by yourself if you have really strong interest in a specific organization. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so let me talk about housing a little bit. If you are a short-term study abroad student, you will live in a dialogue house, which you can, the left picture is a dialogue house. It's a nice, clean, new dormitory for single semester students. And if you will study abroad for a year, you will live in a regular dorms with ICU students. There are more than 5 or 6 dorms in ICU, and you will choose one of these dorms before coming to ICU. Okay, could you change the slide? So dormitory is a good place to make friends, especially if you have a roommate. But even if you won't have a roommate, you still have a chance to make friends by participating in student club activities. There are some sports teams, dance clubs, or debating clubs, and so on and so forth. So you can choose 1 or 2 student organizations that you are interested in and join the community and make some friends. I highly recommend you join one of the student organizations. Okay, could you change the slide? Oh, okay. So that's all from me.
So I'll talk a little bit about how to apply. So because the program is all in Japanese, we ask that our students have a firm foundation of 4 semesters of Japanese and a B- overall in their standing at their university, and B average in their Japanese and major courses. And it's a traditional, personal statement and a writing sample, along with the approval from the Study Abroad Office and recommendations. And for Middlebury students, for the fall semester or year-long options. The deadline is February 1st, and for non-Middlebury students, the deadline for the fall and academic year is March 15th and October 1st for the spring. So I think I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Miki and Sanae so much for sharing so much about the program and filling us in about all of the different opportunities for our students, and then open up to questions if anyone has any questions. And maybe while you're thinking of questions, I know it's a lot of great information to process. One that Catherine, my colleague, always asks is, what makes a successful student in the program, and what do you look for in what might allow a student to really get the most out of their experience abroad?
Yeah, Can I answer? And then I'll ask Miki too. Miki sees students in out in the field a lot, so um, I'll ask Miki too. I think to me, the most important quality that I'd like to see is curiosity. And when, for instance, something that's surprising comes up, I was like, huh, interesting. Is it just like this person that's a little different? Or would I see another person who is doing the same thing? Huh, there's another person who is doing something that I think is unusual. Could it be a Japanese culture? So the ability to notice something small actually leads to a bigger discovery. And that, I think, is really, really a very important quality to have. Can I give you one example? Like, we usually have a group reflection and talk about Japanese culture and like lives in general. And one time we were in a classroom and we were thinking about, have you made any observations about the Japanese culture? Uh, when you hear the words Japanese culture, it tends to refer to like art, for instance, kabuki or like ukiyo-e or maybe like a famous movie or something. And somebody said, I'm starting to notice that whenever I get to a restaurant, the waiters or waitresses ask, when should I bring your drink? With the meal or after the meal? And she said, I have never been asked that question before. And I thought, oh my God, that's so true. Never realized because I move back and forth between two cultures, but I think it's true. In Japan, typically in Japan, waiters would ask, like, when should I bring your drink? With the meal or after the meal? And another thing is in restaurants, there are buttons you press to call a waiter or a waitress. Or typically in Japan, you have to say, excuse me, to get the attention. But if you're coming from the States, you'd be embarrassed to do that because you don't do that out of politeness to your waiter and waitress, because usually it's taken a sign that your waiter is not doing a good job. So it took me a while. I used to live in the States. It took me a long time to be courageous enough to say, excuse me. And so these are the things I'm learning about Japan through conversations. So it's a long story, but to make it short, when you say, I feel uncomfortable, those are usually amazing opportunities to learn about a new culture. And so whenever you are wondering, ask a question. So ability to ask questions is a good skill. Sorry, Miki.
So I think one of the most important keywords is a community. So I usually recommend students join at least one or two communities in at ICO or in Mitaka City. If you, it can be any types of communities. Like it includes like communities with like Middlebury students school in Japan, or it can be a like dorm community or like student organizations. But don't be afraid to join a community, because um, if you join a community, you will have like a lot of opportunities to be connected with like other students and local people, and you will have very great experiences um, with those people. So you might be shy, or you might be afraid of like speaking with uh, like Japanese students, but as long as you are open-minded and try to become a part of the community, you will have a great experience during your study abroad. And that's usually advice that I give to the students.
That's great. I think, our students are really lucky to have both of you as guides and to have the community engagement course, as well as, their courses at the university and an alumna of ICU to show them the ropes and acquaint them with, the different aspects that they have at their disposal. And I really liked what you said, Sanae, about, questioning times of discomfort and not shying away from them, but kind of leaning into them a little bit more and asking those questions of why am I uncomfortable in this situation, and really reflecting on what that might mean for the society in which our students find themselves. So thank you both for those answers. And if anyone has other questions, feel free to unmute or use the chat feature. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, I see something in the chat. Let's see. I know that Taiko was mentioned as a pre-course option, but is Taiko offered as a student organization as well?
Yes, the answer is yes. Taiko is a PE course, but also it is offered as a student organization. But I heard that it's very it requires a lot of commitment, right? Taiko, I think they have like long. It requires like a very long time of practice, and they will have a huge concert during autumn term. So if you are really interested in like joining the club activity, it's a good idea to join the club. But also please keep in mind that they requires like a lot of commitment.
And the student says that they do Taiko at Wellesley College, so they were interested in trying it in Japan as compared to their experience in the US.
Actually, there were 2 Wellesley students who were a member of the Taiko club as well. I think, I can't remember, her face was on the slide, one of the slides. Her name was Hillary. She was like the leader of the Taiko club as well. As Miki said, they are really serious about practicing, so you can't miss the taiko. And then there are a lot of performances. So to be able to practice every day and then, stay on top of everything is going to be a lot of work. But indeed, it's going to be a great experience. They are really, really good, actually. And as Miki said, they put on like huge performances, right? At the school festival. Yeah. Do they go off campus as well?
I heard so.
Wow. Wow. So they are like touring around and like, like really serious. That will be a great experience.
And did we have another question from, yes, a raised hand from the
Yes.
other Andrea?
Hello, Andrea. Hi. I have a question about the courses. You were showing I think it was 5 courses altogether, but yet then you talked about the fact that a student can come for 1 semester or they can come for 1 year. So are those the courses they can take in the first semester, or those are the courses spread over the year, or it depends on the two programs?
That's a great question. Thanks a lot. That set is typically for the first semester. First semester meaning those who are there for 1 semester. For those who are there for 1 semester, that's it. And if you are staying for a year, that's typically what happens during the first semester. And the rest of the semesters, there are 2 more semesters to go because ICU is a trimester system. During those second and the third semesters, you will have everything on the slide minus the exploration of contemporary Japan. So that exploration of contemporary Japan is kind of intended to gap the bridge, bridge the gap, bridge the gap between the old in Japanese and old language. Yeah. So that typically the Japanese language course, the content course, and then half credit for the reflection and community engagement stays. And then the exploration of contemporary Japan goes during the second and the third terms.
Oh, so when they choose the one content, it will be something else. Every time is a different type
Right,
of
right.
content
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
I have a question, Sanae, which is something that comes up sometimes when I'm talking to students. They hear the name of the institution, International Christian University, and ICU is a pretty well-known name in Japan. But I think some students wonder, what role does religion play? Maybe they don't share the same religious identity. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, sure, sure. That's a great question as well. I have my own faith community that's not Christianity as well, so I can really relate to some of the anxieties as well. Um, Number one, all the faculty members are Christians. Number two, it's non-denominational. And number three, students really do not have to be Christians, or the university doesn't expect the students to convert. And number four, there are elements of Christianity on campus. For instance, there's a Christianity week during which there are events like special invited speakers would speak and so on and so forth. It appears to me, this is my personal interpretation of what's happening on campus. It was founded during or immediately after the war, the Second World War, and it was founded by the Christian community, and the first money to 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 establish the university was collected from ordinary people. So to that university, the Christian identity is really the founding, and there's a certain pride associated with it. So, and I find it very attractive that they really place emphasis on the balance between academic rigor on the one hand and the development of personal personal sense of of being a greater rest of the world by if I say serving, that might sound very religious, but what do I do with this knowledge? How do I make use of it? And how do I contribute to the betterment of the world? So I find it extremely attractive. as a person who is not a Christian working on campus, that the faculty members really constantly talk about the development of character as well as the acquisition of knowledge as well. So in that sense, it's a lot more closer to the educational missions of typical liberal arts colleges in Japan, because the rest of the Japan is like the national universities where they're more focused on the vocational training. Like you become a lawyer, you become an engineer, you become you do something with the knowledge. And so that's more typical of Japanese universities. And by the way, ICU is a very famous selective liberal arts college. It's ranked as one of the top 5 every year. And the royal family came to study. So the grandchildren of the person who is 3rd in the rank in the lineage. If the current person dies, the next person who will become the emperor, his daughters, to plural form, came to study at ICU. So it's a good place, academically extremely rigorous. I hope that explains. Sorry, that was again a very long explanation of a relatively simple question.
Oh, thank you. It adds a lot of insight and answers the question really well. Thank you, Sanae.
Are there any other questions?
I can ask more. I was just curious about the difference between the dialogue houses and the dorms, right? You said that if people come for a semester, they will stay typically in dialogue houses, but if they come for the whole year, they can pick a dorm. So in the dialogue houses, there's only people that are coming as foreigners to learn the language, or they're also students from Japan, local residents. So I'm thinking from a point of view of speaking the language. If inside the house, there's opportunity to speak it also with people that are not learning it.
Yes, thank you for the question. So Dialogue House is for short-term international students and also short-term visiting scholars from like anywhere from, they can be from Japan or other part of the world. Or sometimes, I think ICU has a domestic exchange program with other universities. So sometimes like Japanese students stay at Dialogue House for 3 or 4 months. And currently they offer like only single rooms because of the COVID-19. But usually they have, students have roommates. Students have a roommate, like they live in a like double room, and the roommates would be from either Middlebury or University of California. And because Middlebury has a language bridge, I believe students keep speaking in Japanese in their dorm rooms. But other than that, the Dialogue House has 2 like dorm managers, and they are very nice people, and they care about students, and they give like very good information about like where to go or like where to eat. And I think they're called like mom and dad of the dorms. So students for sure have like opportunities to speak in Japanese with like dorm mom and dorm dad. And I heard like good things about communicating with dorm managers like from students.
Thank you.
Well, we have just a few more minutes of our scheduled hour. If there are any other questions, now is the time. It's not every day that we're able to coordinate this time with Miki and Sanae, so it's great to have them here to answer these questions that maybe Catherine and I don't know right away. So if you have any other burning questions, we'd love to hear them. But if not, I know it's late here on the East Coast, so I want to thank you all again for coming, and feel free to get in contact with any of us at the Schools Abroad. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you again to Sanae and Miki so much for giving us your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you so much.
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。Jessica-san, do you have a question? You look like you were about to say something.
すみません。
Yeah.
ありません、今。
No. Okay. I just noticed, so just wanted to say something. Yeah.
You can just send us an email like,
Yeah.
if you have any questions
うん
after this webinar.
うん
And also just a last thing, Andrea-san, the other one, the Taiko Andrea-san. I remembered the person's name. Her name was Hilary Hicks-san. Maybe you might know her, you may not know her, but there's a person who was in the Taiko group, and her name was Hilary.
Oh, she knows him.
And she played taiko for a year, and she was like really into it, and she stayed on top of everything. And I was like, oh my god, how do you spend that many hours practicing? Anyway,
Her name
amazing. But yeah, sorry.
Her name is Olivia Hicks.
Olivia.
Yes.
Yes. Hillary was her friend. Yeah, sorry.
She was the president the year before I joined Taiko, but she still comes and visits and helps us at practice.
Oh, really? Oh, great. Say hello to her. And then if you have any questions, ask her. She was on campus. She came in as a one-term student and then extended her stay to a year, and so that she could play taiko. So she's really like a good person to ask for tips, I think.
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。じゃあ、ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
バイバイ。